A quick word of warning, this video is going to be Bible heavy. I definitely don't want this channel to be overly religious in nature, but I had to comment on this conversation I just read. And it was a conversation between, I hope I'm getting this right, Gregoire Candelorbe and Guillaume Faye. And I'll leave a link to that conversation in the description below. And in it, Gregoire asks, from a neo-pagan point of view like yours, why do you have more respect for Judaism than for Christianity? To which Guillaume answers, while Christianity carries within it and unleashes a certain moral masochism of the Jewish soul, there is no call for weakness and no submission, no castrating message in Talmudic Judaism. This is basically the thesis of Friedrich Nietzsche, who fiercely denounced Christianity, but also was an ardent admirer of the Jewish diaspora and a vehement opponent of anti-Semitism. Whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn to him the other too, has nothing to do with the Talmud. On the other hand, in preaching the socialist hatred of the rich, or the subservience of native white Europeans before North African, Black African, and Asian colonizer, Pope Francis actually puts himself in harmony and not in contradiction with the Gospel's teaching. This is a load of shite. Firstly, that's not what turning the other cheek means, and secondly, he uses Pope Francis as some sort of proof that Christians are cooks. He's not the one who dictates what is and isn't Christian. He's just a man in charge of an organization of man. I can get into the Pope and Catholicism another day, but for now, I want to focus on the turn the other cheek passage in the Bible and explain to you what it truly means. So when we read scripture, there are four senses. So in the Latin, litere gesta docet, quod creda allegoria moralia quod agas, quotandas anagogia. The literal sense teaches what happened. The allegorical sense, what you should believe. The moral sense, what you should do. And the anagogic sense, where you are going. So for example, the reference to Jerusalem gets people's bow ties ruffled a lot. Let's apply the four senses to Jerusalem. First, historically, it's the city of the Jews. Second, allegorically, it's the Church of Christ. Third, topologically or morally, it's the soul of man. And fourth, anagogically, the heavenly city of God. So as you can see, interpreting the Bible is not that easy, and is why Protestantism and having people read the Bible without sufficient guidance has aided in the destruction of the faith. So let's put the phrase turn the other cheek into context. Matthew 5:38-40. You have heard it hath been said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you not to resist evil. But if one strike thee on thy right cheek, turn to him also the other. And if a man will contend with thee in judgment, and take away thy coat, let go thy cloak also unto him. Now my first impressions from this is that to turn the other cheek, as Jesus has spoken here, means you shouldn't fight head on. And there are other ways to fight. For example, there's this brilliant meme, I'll put it up on the screen, but it's basically saying that if they threaten to take away your driver's license for not vaccinating your children, get a horse and carriage. And it also means not to resist evil, but to stare it down. And it's a Christian patience under injuries and affronts, and to be willing to suffer more than to indulge the desire of revenge. But it does not strictly oblige, as neither did Jesus nor Paul turn the other cheek as seen in St. John 18 and in Acts 23. And these are examples that you may call contradictions of this statement, when in fact they are proofs that to turn the other cheek is not meant to be taken literally. So we'll start with John 18:21-23, and I'll set the scene for you. Jesus has been betrayed by Judas and has been captured. He's being questioned by the high priest about his disciples and his doctrine. And Jesus answers him, why askest thou me? Ask them who have heard what I have spoken unto them. Behold, they know what things I have said. And when he had said these things, one of the servants standing by gave Jesus a blow, saying, answerest thou the high priest so? Jesus answered him, if I have spoken evil, give testimony of the evil. But if well, why strikest thou me? Now Jesus didn't turn the other cheek in the literal sense here. You may call it a contradiction, But assuming there are no contradictions in the Bible, then that must mean he wasn't speaking about turning the other cheek in the literal sense while speaking at the Sermon on the Mount. So I'll go to the second example of St. Paul in Acts 23, 1-5. Paul is standing before the Jewish council who are conspiring his death. And Paul, looking upon the council, said, Men, brethren, I have conversed with all good conscience before God until this present day. And the high priest Ananias commanded them that stood by him to strike him on the mouth. Then Paul said to him, God shall strike thee, thou whited wall, for sightst thou to judge me according to the law, and contrary to the law commandeer me to be struck? And they that stood by said, Dost thou revile the high priest of God? And Paul said, I knew not, brethren, that he is the high priest, for it is written, Thou shalt not speak evil of the prince of thy people, which is quoting Exodus 22:28. Paul then continues to defend himself, and realizing that the council is made up of Sadducees and Pharisees, two types of Jews, makes an argument that he's on trial for hoping for the resurrection of the dead. And this causes the council to start arguing, because the Sadducees don't believe in angel or spirit, and the Pharisees do. A Roman commander sees all the arguing and rescues Paul from the madness. So you can see that Paul didn't take a strike to the face and turn the other cheek. He stood his ground and used his wits to throw the Jews into a frenzy and have a Roman commander escort him out of the court safely. And so my message to the ignorant, the ones who cannot see beyond the material and act as though you know more about Christianity than the millions of people who, for over 2,000 years, have built the greatest civilization the world has ever known. You cannot deem something useless just because you don't understand it. If you don't understand, it's your responsibility to learn. You don't understand how cars work. Maybe you have a general idea or sense, and you know they work because you use them. But just because you don't understand every nut, bolt, wire, and pipe doesn't mean the car is useless. And so it is with Christianity. It functions. It works. We may not fully understand it, but that doesn't mean we jump out in the middle of the motorway. I'm sorry to you, Guillaume Faye. I respect a lot of your ideas, but you're definitely wrong about Christianity. And that's it for today. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Slán.